installment of the DevTools Q1 release webinar. So this part of the show, we're going to kind of do the same thing we did the last time, and that's we're going to review some of your questions that you've asked us that we didn't have time to get to during the webinar, and we're also going to maybe show some product demos. We may even throw in some of the new cool enhancements that we've been doing to help out the community even more. So without further ado, my name's Michael Crump. I'm one of the members of Developer Relations. I work as a developer advocate here, and I have two other people here with me, Sam and Ed. Say hello, please.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Sam Basu. I'm a developer advocate just like Michael and Ed. Sorry I missed out last week. I was out of the country, but hopefully today we get to answer some more questions that you had during the webinar. In particular, I want to take on some of the ASP.NET MVC questions and some questions around maybe universal apps and just overall like product strategies and where we are going with things. Ed?
So my name's Ed Charbeneau, and I'm part of the DevRel team as well. I work with these two awesome gentlemen. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter and ask me questions about our products and responsive web and pretty much anything web.
Excellent. So I believe we will go ahead and kick things off by letting Sam have the floor. We missed him so much last week. Ed and I was tackling some of the just ASP.NET Ajax questions to Xamarin questions to report server reporting and things like that. So we're going to let Sam, we're going to just give it to him right off the beginning. Let him talk a little bit about MVC questions that you ask, and also some of the new cool stuff in Windows Universal. So Sam, you have the floor.
Sure. It gets lonely without me, right, guys?
It was lonely without you. We wanted you here.
All right. So thank you everyone who joined us for the webinar. This was like last week, and we get tons and tons of questions from you guys, which we love. So we have sorted them through. Most of them were answered during the webinar. There were a few that we just couldn't. I mean, we just couldn't type as fast to answer all of them. So I have a few questions that were open. So let me go ahead and try answering some of those things. And I do have the names of the people who did ask the questions. So Paul Oxford had asked, can you guys expand on whether the grid for MVC, and he's talking about the UI for ASP.NET MVC Suite, is that the same grid as you get with Kendo UI? And the answer is absolutely yes. In terms of product strategies, and I have a blog post coming up maybe like tomorrow that kind of explains this. In terms of product, Kendo UI is primarily meant for the JavaScript, the front-end developers to write the next cutting edge of web and mobile apps. But it's purely JavaScript and CSS and HTML5. And for the regular ASP.NET developer, if you're not used to doing so much on the client side, that may not be your cup of tea. So UI for ASP.NET MVC is actually giving you the MVC wrappers, very similar to the HTML helpers that you see in regular MVC, but it renders the same Kendo UI controls that you would normally through your JavaScript. And it's the exact same markup that's get rendered on the client side, except you're writing it on the server side through MVC wrappers. And it's actually the UI for ASP.NET MVC product is actually much more than just the Kendo UI wrappers. It integrates very nicely with Visual Studio. It gives you like scaffolding, it gives you templating, and all of these things that you expect as an MVC developer. But primarily, everything that you have in Kendo UI in terms of the UI controls and the widgets, that's like 70 plus widgets, all kind of jQuery based. You can render every one of them using the MVC wrappers. And the grid is actually one of the heavily used ones because enterprises love grids and like edit capabilities and virtualization within the grids and so on. So the grid that you render with ASP.NET MVC is actually the same grid as in the Kendo UI grid, and it has all the bells and whistles, CRUD operations, sorting, paging, everything. You can set up everything from the server side, including like any data source that you're hooking it up to, and whether you want to do the paging, sorting, all of those things, client side or server side, you can set them up all through properties from the MVC wrapper. So it is absolutely the same grid. All right, so moving on, Louis Asanza had a good question, which I actually did not have a clear answer for. I was going to check the roadmaps. The Kendo UI control suite has this thing called the editor control, which is again one of the popular ones, especially if you have something like a blog or a website where you're accepting user comments. You don't want just like flat HTML or anything like scripts that someone might just enter and just submit. You really want that to be filtered out as coming out as clean HTML down the pipe to your server side. And that's where the editor is really good for. It gives you a rich text editor and lets the user type in whatever he or she wants, including images and any types of rich text. The editor control right now, and this is what Louis was asking, it actually does not have a spell checker. I mean, we do have a spell checker for ASP.NET Ajax, but I could not see a spell checker right now for the editor Kendo UI control. Let me look. I think it's somewhere in our roadmap, but we don't have it right now. It's hopefully coming very quickly. So Sean Pete had one of the questions that I really love, because this is like forward-facing, and it kind of tries to put the context of what we're doing today with what's coming down the pipe. So Sean had asked, what are your plans for Telerik with ASP.NET vNext and tag helpers? So while I'm talking, I'm going to let Michael maybe share his screen and pull up a DevTools ebook and a couple of white papers that we wrote. This is particularly around ASP.NET 5 and everything new that's coming up in .NET. And so the reason why this is a great question is it's forward-facing to see how can the Telerik ASP.NET Ajax suite that you're using today, and even the MVC suite, how is that going to work moving forward? Because as we all know, excuse me, ASP.NET 5 is coming up, and it's kind of it's new and it's different. It's very modular. You can run ASP.NET applications on Linux and OS X boxes and so on. So absolutely, we and the engineering teams are looking very closely at ASP.NET 5 as it matures. Everything is open on GitHub, so we do check out what the ASP.NET team is up to. Be rest assured that everything that you're doing today with UI for ASP.NET Ajax and UI for ASP.NET MVC will continue to work ASP.NET 5 once that comes along. There will be things that you will be leveraging, the new features that you will be leveraging, but flat out, if you're using the full .NET framework, everything will keep working as usual. Tag helpers is a brand new thing coming in MVC 6. For those of you who may not have heard about much of it, it's really a new way of writing server-side controls on the client side, but once that you can hook this up to like an MVC method on the server side. So it's really more like semantic HTML, where you have like custom HTML tags that only the ASP.NET engine really cares. No browser is going to care about what those tags are, but it's a way for you to hook up UI controls to something on the server side. And so we are looking at the tag helpers. I think the last the product team told me was it's a little unstable right now, but they're looking at a few of the Kendo UI controls, the MVC wrappers, to utilize tag helpers. So it may not be for something as heavy as the grid, but for smaller controls like the MVC controls, like all of the UI editing controls and the input controls, do expect that we will have some sort of support for tag helpers. Let me take a break. Michael, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, let me go ahead and I'll show them a couple of those things that you just mentioned just a second ago. So I'm going to share my screen real quickly. Let me go ahead and get that ready. Bear with me a moment as I switch screens. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen at this moment. And what I'm showing here is this is actually the 20 burning questions for ASP.NET developers. This was what Sam was talking about just a moment ago. And if you scroll down the page just a tad bit here, you'll see these are the questions that that is really the most important to you. You know, what does .NET Core going open source mean? You know, what's included in ASP.NET 5? So this is a white paper that Sam worked on, and it includes, you know, obviously MVC 6, and I have a sample of it that's right here, and you can kind of see there's quite a bit of things in store for you, but it also answers the hard questions and gives you obviously some great diagrams on how to get prepared for that. But besides the 20 burning questions for ASP.NET developers, which was a huge effort, there's also an ebook that kind of plays another part of that. So this was actually called The Developer's Guide to the New .NET. And we've had all kinds of people ask us various questions about, you know, hey, you know, what all does this mean? You know, obviously we have ASP.NET developers that join our webinars, but also there's other things. So Windows 10 is obviously another big thing. What about Visual Studio 2015? Do I need to upgrade? C#6, Roslyn, Another feature that Sam loves is .NET on a Mac. And also, how can Telerik help with that? And we have obviously an ebook that you can download for free. And here's just the contents of that ebook. I'm sorry. So here's just the contents of that ebook, and as you can see, it's right around 49 pages. So you can check that out as well. That leads you. That's two of the efforts, two pieces of content that we've worked on recently. But there's also a couple of other things that I was going to mention while we're in here, and especially still talking about ASP.NET. Obviously, the home for all of our stuff is just at developer.telerik.com, and once you land there, you can see our absolute, latest article. But if you click on this community tab, and I've went ahead and I've opened it here, you can see that there's other pieces to this puzzle. But the one that I wanted to bring focus to is this presentations in a box. So obviously we have user group support if you run a user group. We have our developer experts if you're interested in becoming one of those on a certain Telerik product. We have office hours where we talk about Outbuilder. We have MS MVP benefits as well as featured apps. But presentations in a box, it contains 3 presentations right now, and one of those ties into ASP.NET Ajax. So if you click on that, you'll get some more information, but it'll eventually lead you to this slide deck that Sam and Ed built that will help you get started with ASP.NET. And as you can see, it's a very rich slide deck. You don't need PowerPoint or anything like that. You basically just need to go to the website. And I found this great for being able to go ahead and jump in and start giving presentations, even at your local user group or whatever. So that's just a couple of resources that I thought may be beneficial for you.
All right, thanks, Michael. Let me take back over and talk about a few more questions that we got. So Devendra Parmar had asked, are the Telerik templates equally applicable to VS 2010, 2012? What's going on with the Visual Studio version? So I'm not exactly sure which product he's asking about, but let me try to answer it kind of in a generic way. So we showed off a couple of new Visual Studio templates that we are introducing across many of our products. Actually, most of DevTools are getting new Visual Studio templates. The desktop ones like WPF and Silverlight and those things are getting like brand new Office themes for WinForms and WPF and so on. So your apps can start out with the Office ribbon theme. And someone actually was asking if it's okay for us to be using the ribbon theme. Is that legally okay with Microsoft? Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have made sure if you're building apps with that Office theme, it's perfectly fine. So in terms of the templates that I showed off, which belong to UI for ASP.NET Ajax and MVC, there were new templates that get you responsiveness out of the box. And some things like there's Bootstrap built into like the regular ASP.NET templates. We're talking about responsiveness where some of the controls and some of the things, like if you did not want to use Bootstrap, if you just want to have responsiveness out of the controls, you can do some of those things with the templates. It gets you to a great starting point. Now, in terms of where these templates are what type of Visual Studio support they have, since this is ASP.NET, you can actually go all the way back to VS 2010. I want to say it's even like 2008 backwards compatible. But so everything 2010, 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015, you should be good to go. Those templates do work. But if you are using UI for Windows Universal, and this is another question that I had from somewhere, I'll try to find the name. But keep in mind, Windows Universal controls are slightly different animal because they do depend on the WinRT framework, which did not come. I mean, that's not backward compatible with other versions of Visual Studio. So I think for Windows Universal, that is Visual Studio 2013 and forward. But the rest of it should be backward compatible with other older versions of Visual Studio. Let me answer a question, which is, okay, so this was from Charles Volstad, if I'm pronouncing that name right. Are there any plans to combine the web forms template and the MVC templates like in Visual Studio 2013? This is a great question, and maybe we'll let Ed chime in on this. But my thoughts are, I mean, right now they're separate, and I think they will continue to be separate because for us, web forms and MVC are do slightly different things. it essentially boils down to having two DLLs on the server side, right? For ASP.NET Ajax or web forms, you have the ASP.NET Ajax DLL, and for MVC, you have the MVC DLL. Microsoft did this thing where they called it like the one ASP.NET a while back, and they used to have like one ASP.NET project you're creating, and within that you could mix and match web forms and MVC. And you can still totally do that with our controls. Again, the moment you add the MVC DLL, you can do all the MVC stuff. You add the Ajax DLL, you can do all the web form stuff. So right now, when you go into Visual Studio and you say File New Project, you do see web forms and MVC being slightly different for the Telerik controls, and I think they will continue to be the same. But keep in mind, there is nothing stopping you from mixing and matching.
Yeah, Sam, if I can add a little bit there. When you're using ASP.NET MVC and web forms, they coexist in the same application just fine. However, the markup is still going to be wildly different because you're using Razor for one view language and web forms for the other. So combining those into one template would be really tough to do.
Yep. All right, so moving on. So Mark Atwood was asking, and I'm sure Ed will love to answer this. Maybe you already did last week, but given the huge number of options, how would you recommend someone new to Telerik Web Tools? How should they start? And it's one of those classic things as to how you should begin, and it all depends on the team that you're working on. Is that something indie you're doing by yourself, or is it a team that you're working on? I still believe web forms are a great way to start because it's simple. You know exactly what server controls you're using and how they're rendering. ASP.NET MVC is maybe more shiny and new and it's closer to the metal. It gets a little more love from Microsoft these days, but I mean they're both equally there, and they're equal citizens in the ASP.NET world, and nothing is going away. So really, it depends on your team and your comfort level as to whether you want to do MVC or web forms. And like Ed was saying, you can totally mix and match. Ed, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'll say it also depends heavily on, like you said, your team, but also your own background. What type of development have you done before? If you've done desktop applications before, web forms is going to be more of a natural transition for you. Maybe if you've done something like PHP or Ruby, ASP.NET MVC would be much more of a natural progression.
Yep. All right, so moving on, Nathan Cunningham had asked, where can I get more information about developing iOS apps through Visual Studio? And I'm sure Michael loves to answer questions like this. You have a lot of choice nowadays, especially going cross-platform in Visual Studio. For our stuff, the two primary things you can do is go with App Builder, Telerik App Builder, which lets you build hybrid applications entirely inside of Visual Studio. You don't have to have a Mac to build. We give you simulators, and you can actually deploy directly to your iPhones. And the other option is native script. And the choice between this depends on whether you are whether you like coding in HTML5 JavaScript, or whether you like a little bit of JavaScript, but then you like your XAML data bindings and some of the event notification system that you have in XAML. Michael, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget Xamarin.
Yep,
Xamarin.
absolutely.
Yeah, Xamarin is obviously for the C# crowd, and this is typically one of the crowds that we work with and we deal with a lot. I answered quite a few questions on the last Hangout. If you want to check that out, it's basically just over at YouTube.com, and if you do a search for Telerik, you'll see our main page, and you can see some of those questions. But we've been expanding our Xamarin suite, and we've been adding in different products for those, and a lot of the questions keep coming back to when is support coming for Xamarin Forms, for example, the side drawer and the list view, and I gave some dates on that. We're looking in the next couple of months you'll have the ability to use those inside of Xamarin Forms. But Xamarin is also one of the ways that you can hit and you can target those other devices. You can even write for Mac OS X if you didn't know that. So Xamarin, you have a lot of options there. But if you're looking for iPhone applications, we have templates for native script, and we have templates for App Builder as well that integrate with Visual Studio, and I think that's something that people like to use is especially kind of that starting point. So in our UI components range that are for Xamarin range from different things from charts to calendars. We've also added a new data source where you're able to parse things and work with arrays and things like that a little bit easier. So look at a couple of those other choices, and then obviously, this is something that Ed could probably speak to. Mobile web, if it is an app that doesn't need to actually be deployed to the App Store. We obviously have the ability using ASP.NET to write a mobile web application if you don't need a lot of access to the different things like cameras and things like that.
Yeah, if you have an existing web application already, you don't need those things Michael mentioned, like hardware access to camera and things like that, then build responsive. All of our controls support responsive web design. So if your platform's already out there and it's already working, you can port it to mobile really easily.
Yep, so actually Terry Popson had it's not a question, but he said, I love all the responsive additions, and I'll be using the navigation and the new responsive controls right away. So there you have it. Responsive is the way to go.
Yeah, and so while we're here, I wanted to go ahead and say, if anybody that's listening in has any questions, feel free to put those in the chat window. Last time we had about 2 or 3 that came in that were pretty strong, good questions that weren't asked and they weren't in our Excel sheet that I think benefited, the whole group and for the other people that's not able to watch this broadcast live. So if you have any questions, just type them in, and we'll be able to give you an answer. And if we don't know it, we'll definitely look it up. Last time I believe we had to look up one. So feel free to drop in a question if you've got something. So right, I think.
Michael, you got.
Oh, yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so let me take some universal or kind of desktop-ish questions. So Tomislav Trosik was asking, in the new Office type templates that we are supporting, is there any mail logic built in behind the sending and receiving of mails? Unfortunately, no. And that's not something we essentially want to get to because those are really templates that help you. They provide you a nice UI, which is Office themed out of the box, but we don't want to get into like hooking up the SMTP servers on your enterprise. So that's something you would actually have to do. So those are just buttons which are styled, and you can hook them up either like with a click event handler, or if you're doing like an MVVM pattern and you have your views hooked up through like command system onto actions that you want to take, you can do the same route. But it is something you'll have to do explicitly to hook up the SMTP servers. Let me talk a little bit more about some of the other Windows Universal stuff. So they're saying, we're asking about the new looping list control, which is in Visual Studio, the Windows UI. UI for Windows Universal Suite. And he was asking whether it's part of the toolbox. Yes, it absolutely is. I actually did check this morning. If you get the latest bits, you will find those 4 new controls that are part of the Windows Universal Suite all in your toolbox. So you can do a drag and drop, but also you can actually write XAML to hook up the UI with any code that you want. So let me go on and talk about, let's see. Tom Walker was asking about the list view, and the list view is one of those like fundamental controls that drives the UI for your mobile app, and this is for UI for Windows Universal. I'm sure it's equally valid for the Xamarin and other places where the list view comes into play. And he was asking about performance. The list views are very, very good at performance. This is something we spend a lot of time on, and they do virtualization, and they're very smart at the way they bind data. And so if you give it, like, I think there was a demo that I did a while back where I gave it like 100,000 records, and it was still fluid, and you can like still touch and scroll pretty fluidly. And the reason it's doing that is because it's smart in the way it's binding the data. It's not trying to bind to 100,000 records all at the same time. That'll bring it down. But it's trying to bind to the visible area plus maybe the 2 next or the 2 behind. So it's trying to be smart as the user is scrolling. So let us know if you find any areas where it's not being performing, because we have spent a lot of time trying to make sure those list views are those fundamental blocks in your application, in your mobile app, and it's very performant.
Sam, I'm going to jump on your email question again real quick.
Yep.
I would suggest that person to go out to NuGet and look up some NuGet packages for email. There's a bunch of them out there that help you wire things up and load templates in and do all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and you know, as I've been looking through the questions and I've been looking through some of the stuff that's come in, it seems like there has been quite a bit of confusion right around those templates. So if you don't mind, I see there is a couple of questions here. First thing I want to do, just very quickly, and you can time me if you want, is let me go ahead and share my screen very quickly with the templates. So I'm going to click share, and so here we are. We are inside of, this is just a Telerik WPF App 5. I recently cleaned this box out some. So this is the actual app, and you can see that it's already structured with the MVVM in mind. So you can see you have your view models here and you have your views. In order to get to this application, and this is a question that I've now seen multiple times, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my solution here. I'm just going to go add, and I'm going to go new project. I'm not going to go through all of the wizards here, but I'm going to go Telerik Windows, Telerik C# WPF application, and I'm going to hit OK. And here is actually where you change those different projects. So here's where you can go ahead and grab a Word-inspired theme to the Excel and then the Outlook. The Outlook is obviously the one that I selected. So that's just how, and then once you click next from that screen, it'll bring you to this screen, which obviously your main window appears here. You'll see the only thing that's located inside of that is just your grid with a local of main view, and here is just your main view.xaml. And you can see that it's using a variety of controls. Like here we've got anything where you start seeing the word, Telerik. After that, here's the rad rich text ribbon UI. And if we run this application, and I'll run it very quickly where we can go back to some of the other things, you can see that just out of the box, I haven't actually wrote one line of code here, that we have an application that's already kind of ready to go and ready to be tailored to whatever fits your business needs. So here is the application. And you'll see here, obviously, is our tree view, and here I'm going through the sent items. Here's where you can start searching, all or unread. You can group these items. Again, all of these are Telerik controls. This is our grid view control, where it has like the Excel-like filtering that we've had before. You can click on calendar, and you can see this one where you can stub out more information here. So, and here's obviously like our tab, our ribbons, and it looks exactly as if this was an application that Microsoft created, but it's there. It's available for you, just right out of the box. And that's kind of all that I'll say about that. But you can get those templates for Silverlight, for WPF. You can get those for WinForms, and I believe ASP.NET. Is that correct, Ed?
Yeah. Actually, we don't have those in depth of templates available. We have some grid-friendly templates.
Yeah, the Office themes are for the desktop apps primarily.
Gotcha. So you've got I know Silverlight, WPF, and WinForms. So at least that will help kickstart your development there.
Yeah, and if you're a new developer too, those are great resources to look at for learning and getting started.
All right, so let me switch to the web side of things one more time, and let me answer a question. Hopefully, Ed doesn't burn his screen or throw his computer away, because I know how he feels about this. But it's a good question. So Jin Chua was asking, will responsive table control be added in future? If we bind records to an HTML table and it's unable to display probably nicely on a small screen. Hope Telerik can introduce a responsive table. This is tricky because keep in mind this is something we have hated for a long time. The big reason why things were not responsive in a nice way on the web, especially across multiple browsers and devices, was because of the table. The HTML table is heavy, and then you keep putting stuff inside every cell of the table, and it just becomes a giant markup that's very difficult to scale to different devices. So we don't have any plans right now for HTML5 tables which are responsive. Ed, do you know anything more, or do you want to advise anything against?
our grid control is responsive,
Yep.
and there's things that you can do. For example, maybe you don't need all of the columns to show on mobile. Maybe just some information is really pertinent, and everything else is something that can be looked up when you're back at the office and you have your desktop available. So only show those pertinent pieces of information on mobile.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, go on. Sorry.
Another thing you can do is if you have device detection, like our device detection framework, or use some sort of responsive framework that has JavaScript abilities to switch out those views, what you can do is on the desktop have a grid view, and when you're on mobile, switch over to like a list view. So instead of displaying the data in a tabular format, you just display it consecutively in a list. And I've found that that's actually a good solution too, depending on what the data is.
Yeah, I think, I mean, overall, my suggestion is to try getting as far as away you can from HTML tables, like the pure table tags in HTML, because those very quickly become painful. So what Ed is suggesting is look at the grid, look at the list view. These are very, very polished and performant controls. And there is a reason why we provide those things out of the box, because if you look at the markup of what's been rendered, it's not actually an HTML table. It's like div tags and span tags. And those things are much more flexible to being responsive than a full-on HTML table. So look to use the grid when it makes sense, or switch to something like a list view if you're on a mobile device.
Yeah, this is a situation where I would reach out to somebody, or if you have somebody that's already on the team that's really good with user experience, and get them involved and find out what that user is actually doing with that screen. And you may be surprised there's a completely different experience that you can provide for somebody on mobile that works really well for them.
Yep. All right, so moving on, Simon Bonham actually asked a question, which is, I mean, it's not something we expect from our .NET crowd, but I'll answer it anyways. Is it possible to use Kenda UI on App Builder and as well as use it to build a normal website? It looks like you can do both. Yes, so what Simon is referring to is the Telerik App Builder product, which is really for you to provide, I mean, it's there to give you all the tools you need to build your hybrid mobile application that's cross-platform, runs everywhere. You can deploy it natively to each of the app stores, and absolutely you can use Kenda UI to build the UI for some of your hybrid, the pages that make up your application. But where it's pertinent to DevTools is you can render the same Kenda UI controls through the ASP.NET MVC wrappers. And the MVC wrappers support all of the mobile-specific controls that Kenda UI has. Now, the question becomes interesting because he's asking whether you can build a normal website. And the answer is yes, you can. But keep in mind, these are Kenda UI controls which are very much catered towards a mobile form factor. So I think you'll notice that in the MVC, if you grab a Telerik UI for MVC and you do a start new project, one of the templates is like a mobile website. And those have like a little tab at the very bottom. It's using the Kenda UI tab control, and it's kind of like an iPhone-ish theme, but then it switches nicely for Android because I mean, with Kenda UI is also device sensitive. We can sense what your user agent is from the browser and kind of render the same controls differently. So the tab kind of shows up on the top for Android devices, and for Windows it's a little more circular and Windows-ish. So yes, you can use those in a website. It just maybe looks a little odd because those are very mobile-specific controls. But I mean, there is nothing stopping you. It's the same framework, same JavaScript references, and the same rendering engine that renders both the mobile and the desktop controls. All right, so moving on. Let's see. Do you guys have anything that jumps at you right now?
One thing that has been a question that I've seen a couple of times has been our UI for native controls for iOS and Android. Questions about, you know, when are you guys going to move that into the DevCraft collection? And I just went and double-checked my dates here, and on the March 16th, we actually moved that into DevCraft Ultimate. So if you are that native developer, maybe you know you've you've been doing some .NET, but on the side you need some of the native speed for iOS or for Android, and this also includes Windows Phone and Windows Universal has already been in that in the DevCraft package there, but we've also just recently added the iOS and Android. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. A lot of questions have been around when are we going to add that, and right now, if you're already a DevCraft Ultimate subscriber, it's in your account. Just log in and you'll be able to download the very latest and greatest builds.
Yep. So moving on to a few more things that I just found right away. Tom Walker was asking, well, it's more of a question or a comment. Great stuff so far on the mobile controls. I need to do a talk on these controls in one of my projects at my local developer user group, which is perfect because Michael was just showing you that community section on TDN, which is Telerik Developer Network. So just head out to developer.telerik.com and then go to the community section, and we're trying to give you more and more products where you have nice and easy PowerPoint slides and web-based slides to go and talk about these products to your user groups or to any conferences that you're going to. Okay, so moving on to maybe switching a little bit between web and universal apps. So Tarun Gidwani was asking, does the looping list control change its direction, vertical or horizontal, versus, or I guess vice versa, when the user turns his phone? Absolutely, yes. Otherwise, it would just look awkward. So all of the 4 controls that we released for Windows Universal, if you look at how they're rendered, just make sure on your, like if you have it on a device, make sure your device orientation lock is off, and then as you flip the device left or right, you will see the controls flip, of course, and they'll show less data or more data based on how much real estate they have. But absolutely, if the phone supports the flipping, the app will respond to it, and so will the controls. Jamal Asaf was asking about the adaptive menus, and I believe he's talking about, I guess it doesn't matter nowadays. I mean, the ASP.NET Ajax and the MVC menus are about the same. He's asking if he has to render the menu twice for the Windows browser and for the mobile browser. No, that will be horrendous, because we really want you to have your code build applications that run everywhere. So be it ASP.NET Ajax or MVC, we do have a menu control in both of those things. And if you use that in your web application, the menus actually are responsive. I think moving this quarter forward, both of those suites have completely responsive menus. So as your web application has lesser and lesser space, the menu kind of adapts, and it will move into a hamburger mode if the space is just really too short, or if you go into like a phone form factor, and then it kind of expands into a regular menu if you're on a tablet or a browser. But absolutely, you can render just the same menu one time and expect it to work between desktop and mobile.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Sam, for people that are interested in getting into responsive design. That's actually, the primary goal of responsive design is to try to cut down on the overlap of what kind of UI you're outputting. So you want to try to write the smallest amount of code possible. Write it once, and hopefully you can get a display that works on every screen size.
Yep.
And
Michael?
yeah, and one that I have also wanted to address. I'm kind of looking through some of the other questions that was outside of necessarily some of the things that I demoed. Was Just Code. Just Code for Visual Studio 2015 CTP 5 and 6, and the question there was, what's going on with Just Code? Do we support it? Absolutely. Actually, right now you can go out and you can download it. If you just simply go to telerik.com and you click on the drop down and you go to Just Code, you'll see that down at the bottom of the screen there is Just Code for Visual Studio 2015. It works with both versions, CTP 5 and CTP 6. One of the things that I wanted to stress with this Just Code is that it's built from the ground up and that we are using the Roslyn engine. So it's absolutely, blazing fast. And the other thing is I know people have been wondering, C#6. Yes, there is C#6 support. It's already in our preview build of Just Code. and you can download that. And as Visual Studio keeps maturing, or Visual Studio 2015 gets to the point to where it's released, don't worry, we're going to be there for you, and we're actively working on more new features. But I was pleasantly surprised myself as I wrote an article on C#6 that I finally had a tool, a productivity tool, that understood the new syntax, whereas with other tools that I've tried, they didn't really understand what that syntax was. So anyway, just so you're aware, Just Code is available for Visual Studio 2015. If you want to go ahead and play with the preview bits, I'd encourage you to go check it out. Totally free.
Let me answer one more, and I think this is interesting. It kind of melts into what we are thinking as .NET and Windows developers going forward. So Jason Amies was asking, will Telerik UI for Windows Universal apps, the ones you build with UI Windows Universal, will they be working on Xbox One? Yes and no, and keep in mind this is not just us, right? So what you are building with Telerik UI for Windows Universal is really universal apps, right? And these universal apps, right now the promise is that you build it once and it works seamlessly across Windows Phone and Windows 8 or Windows 8.1. We have heard this over and over again in the Windows 10 demos, that there's a strong Xbox presence in Windows 10, and you will be able to run Windows Universal apps on Xbox One. But I don't think we have seen that final or what it looks like yet. But keep in mind, as soon as Microsoft says Universal apps are welcome and they'll run on Xbox One, everything that you build with Telerik UI for Windows Universal will absolutely run on Xbox One, because all your DLLs, everything is just bundled up as one universal app package, and wherever universal apps run, your Telerik Windows Universal apps will actually run in the same places. All right, so I know we planned on about 45 minutes. We're getting there. Ed, you have anything else?
Yeah, sure. I have some questions about our Bootstrap theme. Some people were asking very specifically, does the new Bootstrap theme for the UI for ASP.NET Ajax support this specific control? So what I wanted to do is share my screen real quick and show our demo website. And so I've got the wizard control up here. And in regards to our Bootstrap skin, if we go through the skin selection here and choose Bootstrap, you'll notice our wizard control has changed over to match up with the Bootstrap framework. So the skin is matching up with the framework, and we're skinning all of our controls with this. You can see the text boxes have changed, buttons have changed. So this is a complex control that's made up of many other controls, and you can see that skin is applied to everything. So if we went through any of these controls, like our list box, for example, you'll see that they're all given that Bootstrap theme. So if you have a specific control in mind, yes, it will work with that control. Anything that's in our Ajax suite will work with the skin.
Excellent. And do you have anything else?
Yeah, another question was, where do I find the CSS that belongs to the skins for ASP.NET Ajax? And if you go to your installation directory, and there's a skins folder underneath of the installation directory, and you'll see many folders under there, and these are all your skins. So if you need to look at some CSS for your skins that you're using, for example, Bootstrap, you can go into that folder and you'll see many CSS files, and these are all files for each individual control. So you can go in there and see how those are built and override the controls for what you need.
All right, so Michael, why don't we end with a question that I know you would love answering. So Scott Prohaska was asking, can you give me some guidance? I want to write an app that works on every mobile device, iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and web. And I would really like my front end to be written only once. Can you tell me which Telerik ingredients to add to my technology stack, NativeScript, Xamarin, which controls. And I love these things because, I mean, as developers, we have like so much of choice nowadays. I mean, you can do all-out C# and Xamarin and write your app that runs everywhere. You can do hybrid mobile apps with Telerik App Builder and Kendo UI, and so on. So, Michael, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, so just adding on to that, it really has become to the point where it's just all about choices. And, it sounds, probably strange to always keep saying this, but we offer whatever your development method, is, according to what the developers that you currently have in-house, we have a solution for you. And I say that because I've worked and I've been with a lot of different web teams that can absolutely use the power of hybrid applications. Or sometimes it could be even a consultant agency that needs the mom and pop's restaurant shop, and they need some directions on how to find it. Hybrid apps are absolutely great for that. NativeScript obviously is one of our latest products, and you can just go to nativescript.org. Obviously, you've got JavaScript there for your business logic. You've got XML for your UI logic, and then you have CSS for your designing and styling of buttons and stuff. Those are two great solutions for web developers. Obviously, those are hitting your mobile devices, and Windows Phone is going to be coming soon for NativeScript. Presently, it's not there, but also Xamarin is also a third choice that you could possibly use. And with Xamarin, you're able to get all of the major phones, or the 3 major phones that's currently out for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. And we have UI components to help you out there, and we also have data controls that help you with manipulating of data. And on the webinar, I showed a very brief sample of how I was using that with an array. So there's all of these choices, and then there's obviously when you're trying to hit the desktop as well. There's where you could pull in something like Kendo UI, to help out with that application. So what I always advise people is to, before as coders, we always want to just grab something and start building. I would say always to go back and look at your development team and see what your skills are there. And this also even goes into when last week 2 weeks ago, I was at DevNexus, and I primarily spoke with a lot of Java developers and asked, what were you using for development? And they were like, well, everybody in-house is just knows Java. And I'm like, so you're building Android apps? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, so what are you using? And they're using Android Studio. So absolutely look at what you have in-house, first, and see if that's what you need. Obviously, you need to look at the app type. And depending on all of these different things, you can make a very well-informed decision on which technology you want to use, if your in-house developers can do it, or if you need to pull somebody out from some sort of outside source, like a consultant, for example.
Yeah, Michael, I was at Boston Code Camp last weekend, and I had a couple people approach the booth, and we're well known for our UI controls. But they were JavaScript developers, and they're like, "What do you do for JavaScript developers?" And when I answered with, "Well, we have NativeScript now, and you can write JavaScript, and that will cross-compile to all the platforms," they just got totally excited. And then we also can't forget the merger acquisition with Progress and the things that's brought, like Modulus for hosting your Node.js applications.
Yeah. So I think all of these technologies that Michael was mentioning, I mean, NativeScript and Xamarin and hybrid mobile apps, they're really great. Really depends on your choice and your comfort levels. But also, I mean, keep in mind that I still believe in responsive web, just pure web applications that run everywhere. There's a place for that. I mean, unless you need very close device detection and integration with the device, on-device, I guess, accelerometers and other things, you can actually get away really fine with mobile web. And all of our tools, the UI for ASP.NET Ajax and UI for ASP.NET MVC, do support responsiveness out of the box, and you're seeing this more and more. So give that a shot as well. Unless you're looking for App Store presence, I think responsive web is a really good strategy as well.
And I agree 100%. And it always boils down to just remember, if you do responsive web, no more app stores. You don't have to enter the app store. And as far as like, is it going to run on only on my iOS device? No, it's going to run on every device, even that old BlackBerry that you have thrown in the closet somewhere. Anything that's got a web browser, or at least a somewhat modern.
Even devices that don't exist yet, which is awesome. Like watches that are coming out, for example, that are going to have web browsers on them. You'll be able, to tailor your experience to those, and it'll already work, but then you can fine-tune it from that point on and enhance it. So it's a great tier to base all of your application development on, and then move up the chain when your application has already grown large to support those very specific device features that you want. But yeah, responsive is a great way to start, and the web is very ubiquitous; it's everywhere, so you better be everywhere as well.
Well, right, I think that is a wrap.
Yeah, I think, Michael. So let me wrap it up with one last comment, and I think it's hard to beat this over anything else as you look to close. So Bill Rahe from Highland Software, if I'm pronouncing his name right, he said, "Okay, guys, I'm sold. I just got Telerik DevCraft Complete Suite for all of my development needs," which is absolutely what we love to hear. So we are here, and hopefully Telerik DevCraft, you see that it's a combination of 16 to 18 different products for every app need that you might have across web, desktop, and mobile. You don't have to wait for the next quarterly release. We do have like service packs that go out in between our quarterly releases, and you know how to get hold of each of us on Twitter or on any other conference that you attend. We are usually attending conferences across the country or local to your user groups. So get hold of us. Get hold of us online and tell us what your questions and doubts are. Keep in mind, every product that you use within DevCraft, you own a responsibility to share, kind of like shape the future of it and kind of see the enhancements that you want to include in that product. Every one of our products has a strong product page where you can list future enhancements that you want to see, like support a feature. So go ahead and put in those requests. I can assure you that me and Michael and Ed and the entire product team looks at these things very, very closely as we plan the next roadmaps for the next releases. So again, don't wait for the next quarter release, but otherwise it's going to come sometime in 3 months, where we'll do the whole spiel of a webinar and showing you everything that's new. But feel free to ping us anytime between now and then.
Or come see us at Telerik Next.
Yeah, yeah.
And use discount code.
Yeah. If you use any of our last names, yes, you get a discount code of the standard price. And so Telerik Next, maybe let me talk about it for like a few seconds. So it's really a combination of everything that we know so far and just looking ahead at the roadmaps for your .NET and other technology suites that we offer. And so if you use any Telerik products, I think it really makes sense to send some of your guys and hear from the engineers and the evangelists who are working and actively developing your products. But also keep in mind, you also get to hear from industry experts, and these are either startup companies or folks who have like billion-dollar businesses, and you get to hear how they're using Telerik products and even like non-Telerik stuff, Microsoft and Apple and other Google technologies to build the next generation of amazing apps. And keep in mind, I love Mythbusters, and so Granty Mahara is going to come on keynote, so which should be pretty awesome. So it's in the starting of May in Boston, so come and join us. The website is teleriknext.com.
All right, and that is a wrap.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank everybody for checking us out. Obviously, telerik.com, or you can find us on Twitter, except for my name's not listed down at the bottom because it wasn't working, but it's just @VCrump. But we'd love to hear more from you. And again, we appreciate you for sticking with us through 3 minutes, and we will be online and chat with you then. Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.